Today, the news came on just like it does on every day in Israel. And I literally started crying. But this time, it was tears of joy. And I want to share something that makes my heart bubble about what happened. Some of you might have heard it, some of you not. But today, the Israeli military, the IDF, the Israel Defense Forces, went into Gaza and actually manages to release in a military operation 4 of the hostages that were held in Gaza. The 4 hostages are Noah Argamani, she's 25 years old, Meir Almog, who's 21 years old, Andrei Kulchug, who is 27 years old, and they were from the party, that rave, that party that was actually attacked by Hamas, and another guy named Shlomi Ziv, who was older and 40 years old, that was taken from one of the areas. And so we're talking about 3 men, 1 or 3 males, 1 female, and we are ecstatic. And there's pictures of them coming out. Noah Argamani was the very face of the hostages in Gaza. She was the half Chinese, half Israeli. Everybody in talking about her, we realized that her mother was sick with cancer. I mean, it was the indicative, and she, together with the 3 others, were released. They are all good. They're all in good care. And what I would like to do is talk about what happened, how it happened, and maybe before we go too far in this, mention something else. And that is a part of who we are, and part of something like this is, and that is Arnon Zamora. A police officer, actually I would call it, was a part of a very particular SWAT team, was one of the ones that went in to release these hostages, and he was wounded during this operation, and he actually succumbed to his wounds and passed away, and that's the sad part of this. But the whole country is ecstatic. And what I would like to do is take a little bit of the information that I'm hearing that's coming up from the news, a little bit of the information that I know about what's going on in Gaza, a little bit of my experience, and explain what happened, how it happened, and maybe why it's going to be very complicated to replicate this kind of event. Let's go back to what exactly happened. The hostages were held in the middle of Gaza in a camp called Nusayrat. And Nusayrat is something that we've had to deal with in the past. We've been there in the past. We took out the second or the vice head of the Hamas military wing there a couple of months ago. And it turns out that they were keeping these hostages in family apartments in the area that we're talking about. The girl was held in one apartment. 3 of the guys were held up in a different apartment, and we realized or got the information or got the intelligence about them probably about a week and a half ago, and this has all been in the planning for quite a bit of time. An operation like this needs very, very accurate intelligence. And according to what we know, the intelligence went down to the names of the neighbors that were in the apartments next to the apartment where the hostages are kept. Are they armed? Are they not armed? How will they react to this? And how many forces are in the area, are surrounding these hostages? Because we know that they put the hostages in an apartment, but they surround the buildings and the areas around that in order to make sure that we don't get into the apartments. So we know that we've kind of manages to ream the intelligence. And if you're going through, or you understand what I just now said, that means there were people inside Gaza actually scoping out the actual site of this event. Okay, and so the intelligence was accurate, and for a lot of reasons, the decision was made to pull off the operation in the middle of the day. In this case, in the middle of the afternoon, in broad daylight, not at nighttime, and that is indicative of a different way to go on, because an operation like this, there's 2 main phases in the event. That's getting into the site and releasing the hostages, getting your hostages in your hands without them dying. And then getting out with the hostages from a hostile situation. So those are 2 very, very different events. What we do know is that Israel's special forces or police SWAT team went in. We also know there was a special team from the Israeli security or intelligence agency, and they went in undercover, meaning they were in Gaza, some of them on foot, some of them in a truck a Gaza truck driving through the streets of Gaza. And then they stopped the truck and they actually jumped into the apartments that we're talking about, took out the people that were guarding the hostages, grabbed the hostages. But what happened immediately after that is a major firefight in the streets of Gaza. And in that situation, it's a completely, I mean, this is not us going in quietly. This is us this is us coming out with all guns blaring. And I'm going to make this very clear. If somebody sticks his head out of a window and shoots at them, then they are going to put a missile in that window. Somebody sticks his head out of a doorway and shoots at them, they will fire a rocket into that doorway. And that's basically how they did. Tanks rushed in order to give them support on the way out. We know that helicopters were in the area. We even know that they got support from gunships that were offshore. So all of this is happening while they've grabbed these people. They're trying to make their way out. And interesting enough, the pictures that we have of the helicopters actually taking off after these hostages have been loaded on the helicopters were in the area right next to the pier that we need to talk about, the American pier that was brought in to bring in humanitarian aid. I don't know if you know, a couple of weeks ago, the Biden administration made the decision to put an American dock pier on the shores of Gaza, and that humanitarian aid would come from other places in the world to Cyprus. From Cyprus, it would be loaded on to landing craft. Those landing crafts would come to an American pier in Gaza, and those would be offloaded into trucks that went into Gaza. We have been creating a defensive, perimeter around that pier. Weird thing is that pier actually fell apart a couple of weeks ago, I think 2 weeks ago, and actually got washed ashore in different parts of both Gaza and in Israel. It's now been rebuilt, and the choppers that took off with these hostages actually took off from this defensive perimeter where the pier actually stood. And they took off. They came back. All of the forces came out, again, except for Arnon, who was wounded in that battle. It's amazing. The whole world is talking about it. The whole world is saying an heroic hostage event. We've come in there. We've brought out the hostages. I've gone through the news really quickly for the last hour or so just to give you a little bit of indication. So all of the news is reporting this. I mean, even BBC and NBC. But you can see what kind of news outlet you're talking to when you see where they talk about the 4 hostages and then they start making an issue with all of the Palestinians that were killed while we were bringing the hostages out. Al Jazeera even went further to say that we killed Palestinians and in an attack and not really connecting it to the hostage release. So, you know, you get this kind of different dynamic, and that is what has brought us so much joy. The ramifications of this are going to be quite a few. First of all, Israel's got a breath of air. Second of all, Benjamin Netanyahu, who's basically under huge amounts of pressure, both from outside and inside, has gotten a breath of fresh air. The government that was about to fall apart today, basically, Gantz was supposed to get online and talk about that. We'll probably stay together a little bit longer. And this is changing the dynamic inside Israel. I'm not sure it's going to change anything on the American front or even the worldly front. But this is something that is giving us a lot of oxygen, giving Israel a lot of oxygen. And I think it was really important to sit here and kind of run through all of this and explain all of this. Just to end this part, I need to kind of line up with 2 things that are still in the news and connected to this. One, the hostage negotiation. This is going to change the dynamic of the hostage negotiation because Hamas has been saying no to the hostage deal that the United States is saying Israel has pushed forward, and that the United States is pushing, Israel is theoretically pushing. Hamas has said no. And I can argue whether Israel does want this agreement or not, and whether I agree with the agreement or not, but Hamas solved my problem by saying no. And again, I'm not saying it's a solve. I mean, again, there are more than 100 hostages. Even we've gotten 4 out, but there's more than 100 hostages, including a 2-year-old baby that is being held in Gaza by Hamas. So the hostage negotiation is not going anywhere. And notwithstanding what America, the United States of America, and everyone else wants to do, and it's not because Israel is not willing to accept a hostage agreement. Israel is willing to accept something that's going to choke us terribly, but we have said that we're willing to accept. Hamas wants an end to the war. Israel is saying, take out we will stop fighting, return the hostages, but this will not be the end of the war. We will not allow something like this ever to happen again. Hamas is saying we want to stay in power in Gaza, and that is where the hostage negotiation is broken. In the meantime, the fire, the pressure, the noise, the rockets in the north are becoming more and more numerous, and that is becoming more and more of a problem. Everybody, including Israel, including Hamas, including the Lebanese, are realizing that Israel will not have any choice in order but to finish this off. And here's the question: if Israel doesn't reach a hostage negotiation, and we do finish off in Rafah, completely conquer everything, then what's going to happen with the Hezbollah? What, they're going to quit firing? They're going to quit shooting? They're going to quit being a threat to Israel on Israel's northern border? And that's something that we're going to have to see in the near future. The United States of America, with other world powers, are trying to reach an agreement between the Hezbollah in the north, the Lebanese government, and Israel to push the Hezbollah a little bit back, but they have no reason to agree to this agreement. And again, the Lebanese people are freaked out that Israel will open up another border in Lebanon fighting against Hezbollah. They don't want that. Lebanon is a completely broken apart country, but Hezbollah doesn't care about the Lebanese people any more than Hamas cares about the Palestinian people. These are wars that are being fought on the backs of civilian population, and that is something that everybody needs to understand. And maybe to tie this off, I'm standing next to an amazing flag, which is actually a knitted flag. If you look closely, somebody actually knitted it. And I thought that was going to be a good background for this kind of event and this kind of story, because this is Israel. This is a flag of people who actually knitted it piece by piece, bit by bit. And me and Christy are going to be on our way back to the States soon. We're trying to deal with that. So first of all, what I need you to do is pray for the rest of the hostages that are inside. We've got 4 hostages that have been released, but this is not going to end. Pray for what's going on in the north. This is coming to a head, and when the event or the situation in Gaza clears up, this will be more complicated. Okay? Pray for the soldiers that are in Gaza and on the borders in the north, getting ready to fight this fight. Pray for the rest of us Israelis, and if you want to, pray for me and Christy. This has been an amazing time here in Israel. We're getting ourselves organized. We're coming back next week, and we're trying to figure out what's going to happen there when all of this has happened here, and what kind of a role. And again, like I've said, if you want to support Israel, there's a link to Gijon Springs underneath. Gijon Springs supports Netiva, and you're going to see a movie about Netiva in a little while. It supports different military units. It supports a pro-life ministry and other things. This is a support for Israeli Christian ministries in Israel. So if you're interested in that, and one of the ministries that Gijon Springs supports is the Balagan Connection, which if you want to support us, you can do that like this. Happy, joyous, wonderful. Thank you, Lord, that these people have been released. This is DaviD TaL. This is the Balagan Connection. Right now in Modi'in. Hope to see you here soon.